Hi everybody, this is Mr. Zoeller, and today I'm going to be presenting to you a screencast on the First Continental Congress and the battles at Lexington and Concord. For your objective for the screencast, you should be able to summarize the importance of the events of Lexington and Concord and the First Continental Congress. So let's start with the First Continental Congress. So the closing of the port of Boston as a result of the intolerable acts after the Boston Tea Party was the final insult that led all the colonies except Georgia to send delegates to the First Continental Congress, a gathering of delegates from throughout the colonies. At Carpenter's Hall in Philadelphia, which is later going to be called Independence Hall, they remained locked in weeks of tense debate, arguing about what should the 13 colonies do in response to this. Virginia delegate Patrick Henry and other radicals believed that violence was unavoidable. Delegates from Pennsylvania and New York, however, had strict orders to seek peace. At this historic crossroads, the delegates compromised. They halted all trade with Britain and alerted the colonial militias to start preparing for war. Meanwhile, they drafted a Declaration of Rights, a list of 10 resolutions that included the right to life, liberty, and property. King George refused to consider the Declaration of Rights. Instead, British colonial leaders ordered their troops to prepare to seize the colonial militia's weapons. So the First Continental Congress is going to be kind of the first kind of secret meeting of representing of almost all the colonies and in response to how should we respond to what the British have done in Boston. And so I want you to go ahead and pause and write down in your notes here, in what ways had the British government been taking away the colonists' rights to life, liberty, and property? So go ahead and write down the list in your notes of what do you remember of how the British have taken those rights away. All right, let's go ahead and continue. So after this meeting, we're going to have the spark that's going to start the American Revolution between the 13 colonies and Great Britain. And this is going to be a part of the battle we call the Battle of Lexington and Concord. So on April 17th, 1775, a group of British soldiers headed toward the town of Concord, hoping to seize or take weapons held by the colonial militia. The Sons of Liberty in Boston heard about the plan and sent riders, a number of people, including Paul Revere, to warn the militia that the British were coming. So you might have heard the phrase, the British are coming, the British are coming. And we'll talk more about that in class. Militia members were called Minutemen because they were ready to be called into action in a minute's notice. At dawn, the British soldiers arrived at the town of Lexington, Massachusetts, where they were opposed by about 70 members of the local militia. And remember, the militia is just going to be the regular men in that town that have been training to defend their families and their rights. An unknown person fired the first shot. We don't know if it was a colonist or a redcoat, a soldier on the British side, but a shot rang out, and that's going to erupt in gunfire across both sides. So 8 Minutemen were killed and 10 were injured, while the British only suffered 1 casualty. The British moved on to the city of Concord, which is where the weapons were stored, only to discover that the militia weapons had already been moved because they've already been warned. And then on their way back to Boston, they were under constant attack from the Minutemen. So the Minutemen and the local guys there in Massachusetts knew the land really well. The Redcoats are following the road, and so they're able to take cover behind walls and trees and basically using guerrilla warfare tactics of attacking and hiding and coming out and attacking and hiding over and over again. So by the time the British got back to Boston, over 250 soldiers were wounded, missing, or dead. And that was a huge number based on the amount that they sent. So here's a drawing showing the troops heading their way to Concord, Massachusetts. And then here's another painting of the effects at Lexington. You can see the men there. And as they're heading back to Boston, you can see the colonists down here shooting at them along the side. And then feel free to pause this video so you can take a look at how the British left Boston to get to Concord and the routes that different messengers such as Paul Revere, William Dawes, and others took to be able to spread that message to the people that